Hello and welcome. This is Erin Bell moderating for MIT Horizon. Thank you all for joining us today. MIT Horizon is a digital library and learning platform with exclusive original content on emerging technologies, featuring new developments from MIT and industry experts to help working professionals quickly understand and apply emerging technologies to their work. We're joined today by Jeremy Lasky to discuss how science fiction inspires creativity and how his team conceptualized the advanced technology of the Black Panther films. Jeremy Lasky is the co-founder of Perception, a cutting-edge motion graphics studio that led the revolution in creating design and visual effects on the desktop. The studio has sharpened its focus to become a global expert in designing futuristic user interfaces for feature films and for the most powerful brands in technology. The studio has a unique that bridges the gap between sci-fi and science fiction. Jeremy, we'll kick it over to you and let's get started.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Erin. Thanks everybody out there for having me today at MIT Horizons. I'm really honored to be here. I'm just going to say a quick hello, and then I'm going to shut my camera off so I can share my screen and get going with my presentation today. All right, cool. So again, very honored to be here and be asked to give this talk. I'm going to be talking about our unique science fiction thinking design process and how it drove our creation of the technological world of Wakanda. But first, I love this quote. You guys are probably all familiar with it, from Arthur C. Clarke. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. This sums up the three key themes of perception and my passions: magic, technology, and of course, science fiction. I think that you actually have or had a course at MIT entitled Indistinguishable from Magic as Interface, Technology, and Tradition that posits, like new technology, magic creates something out of nothing. There is a thing there now that did not exist before. I wish I had a class like that when I was in college. But first, a quick background on Perception, our origin story, if you will. I founded Perception in 2001 as a design and motion graphics studio with myself and my business partner, Danny Gonzalez. Our mission was to design high-end animation and graphics on desktop machines, which was a radical and cutting-edge idea 21 years ago. We were one of the original motion graphics studios in New York City at the very dawn of that industry. Most of our clients in the first 10 years were big broadcast networks like HBO, ESPN, NBC, Showtime, etc. We also worked a lot with global ad agencies. But in 2009, we got our biggest break of our lives with Marvel. Now, I can do an entire talk on Marvel, my love of Marvel, and how that relationship actually got started. But if I did that, I would never get through this presentation on time. So let's leave it to say that Iron Man 2 changed everything for us. What started off as a small graphical need for the film snowballed into over 120 shots of stark technology. This opened the door for Perception to start collaborating with technology companies who, after this film came out in 2010, began reaching out to us to collaborate on next generation user experiences, top secret future product development. Tony Stark is, or was, the top of the tech food chain in the MCU and a huge inspiration for tech fans and innovators. And I like to think that we played a small part in bringing that side of his persona to life. So today, Perception is an Emmy-nominated design lab pioneering the visionary process of science fiction thinking to architect the future. Now, I'm going to get a lot more into science fiction thinking, but for now, we divide our time equally between the two parallel worlds of science fiction, which for us is working with trailblazing filmmakers, and science fact, which is collaborating with the world's most innovative technology brands. So these are the two halves of our world. On the left here, the science fiction, if you will, is the film. It's almost every Marvel film since Iron Man 2 and most of their Disney Plus shows. We get to design the technology of these characters, and the technology is there so often to support the storytelling. We've also gotten to design several award-winning title sequences for these shows and films. And on the right is the science fact, the technology. It's an ever-expanding portfolio of global technology innovators and groundbreaking companies that we're truly honored to be collaborators with. Good.
Reality is just your perception. What mysteries lie beyond what you perceive? We don't just tell stories. We build worlds. We visualize the future of user experience. And we make science fiction a reality. Open your eyes to a new perception. Are you ready to architect the future with us?
So now let's get into science fiction thinking. I love this quote from the first Thor movie. Your ancestors call it magic, but you call it science. I come from a land where they are one and the same. And again, going back to the Arthur C. Clarke quote that I opened with, we get to play in a world where science and magic collide. Science fiction thinking is a lens. It's a way of perceiving the world through what is possible instead of what currently exists. It allows us to mine our wildest imaginings of the future to analyze our present reality. Perception is hired to imagine what the future could bring. We help companies extrapolate far-reaching potential uses of their products and create a roadmap to build toward. Science fiction thinking can light the path toward innovation and can significantly affect the way companies create and advance. Similar to design thinking, science fiction thinking takes a human-centric approach to creation. The films we work on show how technologies can be integrated and used within an imagined world and light a way to transport that part of the future vision to the present. Tech companies are employing futurists who use science fiction as a medium for exploring new technologies and their potential consequences. Companies as diverse as Volkswagen, Hershey's, and Capital One Bank are bringing these specialists on staff to help envision their futures in a rapidly changing world. Even huge tech companies like SAP and Magna are now building entire organizational initiatives around science fiction and next-gen innovation. This unique and focused niche between science fiction and science fact that perception has been leading for years is being mentioned more often than any time in the past. Some call it science fiction prototyping. What is that? It's the creation and design of futuristic, forward-looking experiences that look and feel as real and authentic as possible. It's an approach to design that speculates about new ideas through prototyping and storytelling. It's a playground of the imagination where new ideas and potential nightmares can have a tug of war, all on the safety of the page or screen. By creating these prototypes, we can explore the various futures we want to either avoid or move toward. Science fiction prototyping allows you to see these consequences while simultaneously opening up multiple pathways for safer, more effective outcomes when you get there. It's all built on storytelling. Frederick Pohl, the science fiction author, famously said, quote, "A good science fiction story should be able to predict not the automobile, but the traffic jam. The idea, of course, is to design it so that the traffic jam doesn't happen." Human beings need to tell, collect, and understand stories. Fiction and science fiction storytelling allow you to live more lives in the space-time of a single time than you would normally be able to. New features and attributes can be tested and studied far cheaper by drawing on a napkin or a storyboard, motion prototype, or cinematic visualization than once the product is actually live. All of these outcomes can be carefully considered before your creation goes out into the world, because once the genie is out of the bottle, it can't be stuffed back in. But it's so much bigger than storytelling. This is world building. The science fiction author Bruce Sterling refers to these as design fictions, which is an approach to design that speculates about new ideas through prototyping and storytelling. He explains, quote, "It's the deliberate use of diegetic prototypes to suspend disbelief about change. The important word is diegetic. It means you're thinking very seriously about potential objects and services and trying to get people to concentrate on those rather than entire worlds or political trends or geopolitical strategies. It's not a kind of fiction, it's a kind of design. It tells of worlds rather than stories." For generations, science fiction has presaged science fact. The greatest writers' imaginations have crafted visions of the future throughout literature that came to light decades later. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with some of these classics. Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, written in 1870, inspiring the first submarine, the Argonaut, designed by Simon Lake in 1898. Another book by Jules Verne, The Clipper of the Clouds, in 1887, inspiring Igor Sikorsky and the first helicopter in 1939. H.G. Wells' classic War of the Worlds in 1890 inspired the inventor of the rocket ship, Robert Goddard, in 1926. And of course, everyone's favorite example, the Star Trek communicator device in 1964, inspiring the Motorola StarTAC flip phone in 1996. This device inspired the flip phone not just because it was the focus of the show or it was a really cool form factor, but rather this device demonstrated the utility and purpose in the daily lives of the Star Trek characters. And then we move on to 1968 with 2001: A Space Odyssey. Director Stanley Kubrick hired two of NASA's top scientists to spend 2 years designing his unprecedentedly realistic vision of the future. That team, in turn, consulted extensively with over 60 technology companies and researchers and experts, with some even getting involved directly in the design. GE helped envision the space station and the lunar base. Bell Telephone contributed to the design of the video phone booth, which is one of the earliest visions of video chat. And IBM designed several of the spaceship's control panels, and this tablet computer in this scene that predated the iPad 42 years later. As we build towards Wakanda, I want to talk a bit about one of my heroes and one of my favorite topics, the GOAT, the greatest of all time, Jack Kirby, the architect of the Marvel Universe, and a true science fiction thinker with his legendary Kirby tech. In the late 50s, after an already legendary career that included co-creating characters like Captain America in the 40s and entire genres like romance comics in the 50s, Kirby entered a declining Marvel Comics on the brink of bankruptcy. And with the creative drive fueled by a Depression-era work ethic, he let loose a wellspring of creative invention, the likes of which had never been seen in the comic book medium before or since. I felt the idea was to come up with new stuff all the time, he recalled. There had to be a blitz, and I came up with the blitz. The Fantastic Four, Hulk, Thor, Captain America, X-Men, Galactus, the Silver Surfer, the Inhumans, and of course, Black Panther, and so many more. The blitz of characters that Kirby brought to life for Marvel is nearly endless. Powerful stories exploding with his boundless imagination and wonder, and an adventure never before seen on the comic book page. His storytelling shows the power and glory of comic book world building at its finest that read like epic odysseys of legends past. But Kirby's technology was a whole other level. It was incredibly iconic and symbolic. Many have even called it sublime. I love this quote from Jack Kirby: "I tried to give technology the touch of legend. And in doing so, I'm telling a story." Comic book artist John Paul Leon described it as follows: "It's tech, it's mechanical, even if it's alien, but it's drawn in such an organic way that you don't question it. It's just an extension of Kirby's world." Here are some of his many awe-inspiring displays of technological invention and wonder. No matter how impossible these are, because of Kirby's artistic genius, they felt believable. He said, "I've always been inspired by conceptions of the future, and I incorporated it into my drawings. What I did was create machines that didn't exist, but they somehow looked practical enough to do the job I wanted them to do in the story." Here's some more classic Kirby tech. Here's the Fantastic Four flying on an airjet cycle, a space-age racing bike held aloft by powerful, shock-absorbing cushions of jet air. And then to the right is a double-page spread from the Eternals. Marvel always had such incredibly thought-out, highly detailed schematics of so much of the technology in these stories. These are right from the pages of the Marvel Universe. As a generation growing up in the 70s and 80s reading these comics, you really believed all these technologies were truly possible. And since so many of these heroes and characters were born straight out of the science and technology, these stories were always so grounded in reality. Kirby's surreal paintings in the 70s of impossible technology of his own unique design. This painting is called The Dream Machine, and it's one of many examples of Kirby tech that he would draw and paint throughout the decades of the 70s and 80s. These are end papers that he designed with his raw and graphic visions of technology. You can notice a very compartmentalized and linear feel of Kirby tech. He had a real love and fascination with exploring graphic visualizations of technology and machinery. Here's a close-up of some of these inner workings of his fantastic machines from more than 50 years ago, which, if you notice, really echoes our modern-day circuit boards, computer grids, chips, and semiconductors. Here's a classic double-page spread of an Eternal ship in a 1976 issue that seems to fly right off the page. And 1 year later, in 1977, this was in Close Encounters of the Third Kind with its giant mothership, which could have been one of the ships of the Celestials, in Kirby's Eternals. And a classic Kirby creation of Doctor Doom in the 60s, no doubt inspiring a young George Lucas, who was a comic fan growing up in the 60s and 70s, and even worked in a comic store in San Francisco. So let's get into Kirby's creation of the Black Panther and the world of Wakanda. Kirby created and introduced this character in an issue of Fantastic Four in 1966. And from the very beginning, the highly advanced technology was always a part of that character's legend and lore. This is a flying car that was gifted to Reed Richards from the Black Panther. It seems to be powered by some sort of magnetic waves, and these push-button controls make it handling as easy as dialing a phone. I wonder how the Black Panther, whoever he is, got possession of such a ship. Here's Reed Richards looking on. He took a small metal device from inside his toga, but it's so small. Can he actually transmit a message halfway around the globe with that? You seem surprised, sir. Actually, this apparatus operates by CCW, cosmic channel waves, which can blanket all of Earth. And now, by your leave, at the mere press of a button, I shall contact my chieftain in Wakanda. Is Kirby predicting cell phone technology? This very important theme of Wakanda and Black Panther being future-forward technologists and bleeding-edge innovators was always there from Kirby's earliest imaginings. Their technology was always ahead of the rest of the world by decades. These are pages showing Wakanda. Remember, he designed this entire world almost 60 years ago. Though the Wakanda tribe lives in the tradition of their forefathers, they possess modern, super scientific wonders we can only marvel at. There's an incredible mystery here, and only the Black Panther himself knows all the answers. So now, let's dive into the Black Panther film and Perception's involvement from the very beginning. This project and film were true science fiction prototyping for a highly technologically advanced civilization with some, shall we say, very unique natural resources. So as I'm sure everybody knows, Black Panther takes place in Wakanda, a reclusive African nation that is the most technologically advanced civilization on Earth. Marvel reached out to Perception almost 18 months before they started shooting, as they wanted us to consult with them on conceptualizing the future tech of Wakanda, and specifically, what can vibranium do? What are the laws and rules of this legendary metal, this ultra rare element that powers their transportation? It's used in medicine, it's in their clothes and garments. They use it for communication, they use it in weaponry, and on and on. We also knew that it had some very unique sound and vibrational properties that we wanted to play with. What did we know about vibranium thus far? Well, of course, we knew it made up Captain America's shield, which we had seen in several films to date. We knew that Ultron had upgraded his suit in Avengers Age of Ultron with vibranium. It was used in the creation of Vision. And then, of course, in Captain America Civil War, we meet Black Panther for the first time. But other than that, we didn't know a lot about vibranium. There was still a lot to be explored and discovered. We also knew that Tony Stark at that point was the top of the technological food chain in the MCU. But Marvel was very clear. Wakanda is a quantum leap forward, and we needed to go beyond Stark tech. So this began by imagining Wakanda and assembling an audit of relevant technologies that we presented to director Ryan Coogler and the Marvel Studios executive team. This initial presentation covered a wide range of fascinating technologies, phenomenons, and visual themes that served as conversation starters with the filmmakers. Cymatic visualizations became a big theme for us. Using a plate, a vibrating mechanism, and particulate matter such as sand, areas with high vibration would push the sand away, unveiling beautiful cymatic patterns and a visualization unique to each frequency. It felt very mathematical, geometrical, and in harmony with the Earth. And then we discovered this video from the University of Tokyo, which was a bit of a game changer for us. This was acoustic levitation using styrofoam particles. Using acoustic radiation pressure, it formed intense sound waves, which would push these particles into the air, seemingly levitating them, creating amazing patterns and formations that we thought could be a really strong inspiration for vibranium and the smart matter formations that we wanted to create. Taking that inspiration, we created interfaces and holograms to visualize various pieces of information and narrative throughout the film, distinctive of any type of holographic forms we had ever seen in films before. The first conceptual challenge was how advanced technology would develop in a vacuum, void of any influence from outside cultures, and what form that takes, what makes it similar or drastically different, and what that means to the characters and their performances, as well as the audience. Vibranium sand as a technological medium was the result of considering how early civilizations might communicate ideas quickly to each other, even before spoken language, by drawing in the dirt. It has a very tactile, raw, and temporary feel, but by extrapolating this idea and powering it through vibranium, it takes on a very refined, unique aesthetic that remains holistic and earthbound in its thinking and approach, using nature and our surroundings to its fullest potential. We then moved on to exploring Kimoyo beads, which of course are given to citizens and on the surface just look like hand-formed bracelets. But in reality, they're made from vibranium as well, and they contain a wide array of Wakandan technology. Everything from data transfer and storage, miniature flying drones, personal communication, and even healing properties were functions of these remarkable beads that we explored. Exploring material, we explored composition and structure and behavior. We explored energy, light, power, textures, refraction, reflection, transparencies, gestures informing the actors' performances. Like this example is the Wakanda bead that's scrolling down into the palm of the hand. This was an example of Wakanda Kimoyo bead being flicked up the forearm, and in the space in between the wrist and the forearm, it would create this incredible interface for the user. This was another idea where we'd pull the Kimoyo bead off the wrist into the air, and in the space in between, you would see an interface form. Here was an idea of actually flicking the Kimoyo bead into the air and showing the hologram form in midair in front of the user. This is an animation test showing the Kimoyo bead decomposing into the palm of the hand and then reforming as the hologram in the palm and then shooting out into the air in front of the user as a much larger version of that hologram. And then this is a final shot in the film of T'Challa and W'Kabi speaking to Okoye, and you can notice the somatic patterns in her back as well, which again was a very common theme for us throughout the design of the film. Then we moved on to exploring the Black Panther suit. We called it the suit 2.0. We of course had seen Black Panther in Civil War, and as you might remember, that suit had two parts. It had the body part and then the helmet, which was taken on and off. But in this film, they wanted everything to be one cohesive whole, being constructed by vibranium nanoparticles that came out of the necklace that T'Challa would wear. So we explored various ways that these nanoparticles of vibranium could surround and take over his body, even over his street clothes, and how that could form, how it comes out of the necklace, and wrap itself around T'Challa. In fact, we even had an idea of using one of the Kimoyo beads as a crush pack. So as the user, crushed it, all of the vibranium nanoparticles would kind of explode out and cover him up. We came up with an idea of these transdermal tattoos that would be kind of light formations under the skin that the nanoparticles would use to follow around his body when they wrap themselves. This was an early animation of the tattoo and a mask coming across his face, again, following the really unique design of the suit. This is an animation that we were exploring of those tattoos forming under the skin and how that could then form the direction of the nanoparticles as they sort of ripple and unfurl themselves across his skin. And then this is an even more of a detailed version of that, a close-up of it, showing the fine detail of the first layer. Then there'd be a second layer of hexagonals, and then almost a top layer of clear coat that would seal it all in. This was an early motion test showing how the face piece would come on, again, really following the unique design and geometry of the suit on the head. And then this is how it turned out in the film, coming out of the necklace. And you could see how all those early explorations made their way in. Then we'll move on to the Royal Talon. So early in the film, we find T'Challa on board the ship with Okoye tracking a convoy of warlords in Nigeria. This advanced aircraft provided opportunities to utilize the vibranium sand as a navigational tool, as well as a strategic interface. We built a sand table in our studio to explore tactile interactions that were appropriate for this medium and to highlight its advantages over digital mediums like holograms or touchscreens. This development gave the filmmakers the opportunity to take advantage of unique interactions and inform the actors' performances in this and several other sequences. Here's the sand table as it's forming the convoy, and you can see that we're pulling the truck off of that convoy, and the fingertip actually brushes the sand away, revealing what's inside the truck. This was a test we did where we used the sand table in the studio, projecting different colored lights and using different lenses to really get a sense of how the sand would react to all these different variables in the environment. And then this is the scene in the film of the sand table coming up. And then this is the scene in the film where T'Challa takes the truck and brushes away the sand to reveal what's inside the truck. We also designed a lot of the other displays on the Royal Talon that weren't made of vibranium sand. They were traditional light-based displays, but the challenge here was they had a unique and distinct curvature. So we experimented with parallax, depth, and volume in the information being displayed, as well as developing a very unique color palette to brand the Wakandan tech from the rest of the Marvel Universe. And here's another close-up of some of the Royal Talon ship graphics. And you can see it here behind Black Panther in the film. I also want to mention the Black Panther Bible. So this was something that the Academy Award-winning production design team from Marvel on this film had put together. They spent months and months writing and designing this incredible world-building Bible. This thing was a tome, hundreds of pages outlining every detail of Wakandan culture, geography, history, lore, tribes, clothing, languages. It was all there. It was world building at its finest. And we wanted to honor and respect this Bible and make sure that everything we designed blended seamlessly with what was conceived in this book and felt like one cohesive world. Here's Everett Ross in the healing room. We conceptualized, designed, and animated the various panels and displays in Shuri's lab healing room, the holographic projection of the damaged area of his spine, as well as the screens in the environment to tell the story. Based on shapes and forms seen in the set design, we proposed this hexagonal pattern seen on the wall would actually reveal itself to be articulating panels, and these panels pulse and ripple, suggesting a physical surface that is uniquely Wakandan. And then finally for the film, we got to design the title sequence at the end, which was set to Kendrick Lamar's All Stars track. And this brought everything full circle for us. All of the vibranium sand particles, the cymatic patterns, the music, the colors, everything kind of came together for us in this incredible end title sequence. So to wrap up this, here is our Black Panther montage in all its glory. Hopefully that played smoothly for you guys. If not, it's available on our website, our YouTube channel, and all of our platforms. So, of course, the sequel, Wakanda Forever, coming out in November of 2022. We had the incredible honor and privilege to continue the world building into this incredible sequel. I could do a whole other talk about that work, and hopefully you guys will have me back to do it. But in a nutshell, we worked on Shuri's Lab, we worked on the Griot AI, Midnight Angels HUD, Ironheart's HUD, the Sunbird ship, more Kamoyo beads, more screens, as well as the emotional end title sequence that was set to Rihanna's Academy Award nominated song, Lift Me Up. So it was an incredible honor to continue this in this world. So I want to wrap up with this idea of the science fiction feedback loop. And it all starts with this notion of the technological climate. What is the technological climate? Well, it's society's appreciation for and understanding of the current levels of technological advancement. It's this collective understanding that we all have of what is currently feasible by today's technology standards. The science fiction writer, filmmaker, storyteller looks at the technological climate and decides where he should go or she should go with their story. If they go too far ahead, it ends up creating confusion. So the sweet spot is really where the science present and the science future blend together. So putting this into a visual, the science fiction writer or filmmaker creates their stories reflecting the current technological climate. Everyone goes to see the films, read the stories, it gets absorbed into the technological climate, which then inspires all of our imaginations to eventually create technology that was once science fiction and is now reality. And once that technology is part of the technological climate, well, that circle starts anew. So it's this endless loop of inspire, create, and repeat. And finally, to close this out, I got this image from noted Jack Kirby scholar Arlen Schumer, who's a friend of mine. This is the most detailed, highest tech close-up of a human cell using all the latest, most current cutting-edge microphotography and technology. And this was Jack Kirby's vision of the universe from over 50 years ago, eerily, remarkably similar. And here's what Kirby once said: "I'm very well versed in science fiction and science fact. I used to read the first science fiction books, and I began to learn about the universe myself and take it seriously. I know the names of the stars. I know how near or far the heavenly bodies are from our own planet. I know our own place in the universe. I can feel the vastness of it inside myself." So thank you very much, everybody. My name is Jeremy Lasky. My team is Perception, and I'm really happy that you invited me today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeremy. This is truly a inspiring and just fascinating conversation. So we appreciate it. If you want to
My
leave
pleasure.
if you want to leave that slide up for a little bit, we've
Sure.
had some interest in possible collaborations or just getting in touch with your
Sure.
team. So for those of you that did have that interest, feel free to check this out, and we'll leave that up for a second.
Yeah.
We're now going to move to the question portion of our event. So we have a lot of questions already. So Jeremy, one of the first questions we have, which I think is a good starting point, is can you tell us a little bit more about your team? What are the roles, skill sets? How many technologists?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we are a full-time team of about 15 people. We definitely, scale up as necessary when it's necessary, when it's needed with specific types of projects that just require a lot more hands on deck. But at our core, we're all creatives, designers, animators, user experience strategists. But more than anything, we consider ourselves thinkers and storytellers. So we all, possess, different expertise in, different pieces of design or animation or 3D or techniques. But, together, we're all kind of amplifying each other's abilities and talents. And at our core, we are all we are a creative shop for sure. Beyond that, there's a lot of production support, with our director of production, producers, and production coordinators that really support the team and the clients in making sure that work is getting done on time and up to our standards and so forth. But yeah, it's a strong, mighty team.
Awesome. Yeah, big work for a team that size. So thinking about the creation, how often do you pull back on future thinking ideas? The questioner says, I would imagine you let your imagination run wild, but then there are questions that you have to gauge, is this going too far?
For film or for real projects?
Um, that's actually a good
I'm assuming it's
clarification.
film.
Let's
I
stick
mean, a
with
lot of
film.
the stuff that we do, in the film is really, it's all in the service of the storytelling. And so much of the characters that we design technology for, um, the tech is a part of who they are. It's a part of their persona. Who is Tony Stark without his technology? What is Wakanda without vibranium? It's so much of the foundation of these characters that, what we get to do is create this tech to support who they are and that other side of them. And in a way, it matches the personality. Tony Stark's holograms and interface are really like an extension of his own imagination and his own creativity. We designed Jane Foster's devices in Thor: The Dark World. She's a scientist as well, but she's not Tony Stark. So her tech was put together with pieces of parts that she got that looked like something out of a Radio Shack uh, uh, pieces. So because that's a reflection of who she is. She's not a billionaire, Tony Stark. She's Jane Foster, and she's in a camper in the desert. And then Nick Fury, we did a lot of his technology for Shield. His technology is very militaristic, utilitarian, mission critical. It doesn't have any artistic flair to it. It's very much like about what the mission is at hand, and that is reflected in his tech. So what I'm trying to say is that all the tech that we do really has to feel like an extension of the character, because if it's not, it won't be believable. And if it's something that the character wouldn't even be able to attain, then you lose the audience there too. So you want to make sure that everything really matches up, perfectly well with who they are, their personality, their means, and so forth, and that tech is really there to support that.
Absolutely. Awesome. So the next question says, a lot of MCU tech utilizes hand and arm motions.
Mm-hmm.
Have you designed any technologies with accessibility or disability in mind?
Some of the top secret stuff that we do for real tech clients, we have, for sure. And yes, there's a lot of hand movement, there's a lot of arm movement in the film work. A lot of that is very theatrical and very impractical, clearly. We all were mesmerized by Minority Report, when that came out, and all the hand gestures and the arm movements. But, in reality, that would be quite tiring and exhausting to use. But yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, great. So another question we have is, do you see movies as an effective medium for getting younger generations excited about STEM?
Definitely. I think as these films appeal to a new generation, and as these characters are appealing to a wider diverse audience, and everybody kind of see themselves in different characters, I think that appeal is broadening more and more. And these characters are cool. Everybody has their favorites, and people are characters that they aspire to be like or look up to, and that definitely I think is inspiring a new generation, to get interested in STEM and other, technological careers and pathways.
Absolutely. Awesome. Next question is, do you think sci-fi always has to look forward? In an era where some of our tech systems might have grown too big and need to be descaled, can you imagine backwards and still be inspired by the future?
That's a good question. I suppose so. It's even if you look backwards, it's still, science fiction is still has to feel somewhat not, real, and somewhat imaginary. If you want to go back and look at science fiction in like the 50s or the 40s or things like that, I think that's what you're asking. But I think the common thread is that it's always looking at what is possible that doesn't currently exist, no matter what era you're in. So I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but that's kind of where I would
Yeah,
take it.
I think so. I can see, especially in the Marvel universe, how you mentioned designing for the character. So
Yeah.
this
You know,
character,
I just thought of when you see, if you guys remember Captain America, the first Avenger, which was, I think in the 40s it took place. It was set in the 40s, and you got the Red Skull, in his crazy planes and cars and stuff, which were completely insane. And he had screens on that plane, which I think were black and white, but felt very advanced for the time, and for the place and time that it was set in. So even in that era, the science fiction had to feel advanced and forward looking, but in black and white.
yeah, exactly. So in that vein of keeping the tech looking realistic, how difficult was it to keep a seamless look between both of the Black Panther movies while still elevating the tech in Wakanda Forever?
I think that's a function of just picking up where we left off in the first one, being really strict with this Black Panther production Bible, and taking so many of our cues from the filmmakers and the costume designers and art directors and concept artists on the film, who just were building off of all of the same ideas that they started in the first one, and then taking it to the next level. So we just kind of followed their lead. Obviously, there's a lot of similarities in the geometry and the graphic design of these elements that we pulled from the first one. Obviously there's vibranium, which is evergreen, thing that we want to continue through all of these films. But then how do we take it to the next level? How do we take what we learned in the first film and apply it to these different applications, and this Griot AI, and the Ironheart HUD, and the Sunbird ship, and all these things? How can we connect them all so they all feel part of the same world?
Yeah, got it. So one more question to squeeze in.
Sure.
About the AR VR domain and where we're headed. So questioner asks about, they're curious to hear your thoughts on modern wearable technologies and the best user interfaces for those systems. Do you think we're missing something? Do you think we could do better?
I don't have a huge amount of firsthand experience with them. I've played with some of the devices. I've played with Oculus. I've played with HoloLens, but I haven't really lived in those worlds for very, very long at all. Any VR experience that I've ever done has always made me a little bit motion sick and nauseous. So I think that's something that we have to solve for. I think there's just there's a world of possibilities and potential that's still to be figured out there, and I think we're really at the in the very early days of it all.
Yeah, got it. Awesome. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for your time today, and
My
thanks
pleasure.
to all of you for joining us. If you want to stay connected to MIT Horizon, please follow us on LinkedIn. You can find us at MIT Horizon. And we'd love to hear your thoughts through our survey as well. So we will send that out to those of you that participated. Have a great day, and thank you again, Jeremy.